T, you got to walk across that stage, but for me and BN, it's our draft night moment, baby. We got to shake the hand of the commissioner. We in the league now for sure.
Yeah, I didn't walk across the stage. I didn't go to the draft, but I got a chance to hear my name called. It was pretty cool.
Let's go.
You got a championship ring, though.
Yeah, I got a championship
That's better
ring.
than being drafted. Yeah.
Talk about it.
I snuck out of there with one. Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask you this question because everybody's moment, is their dream to get across the NBA stage, shake your hand, and hold a jersey. What was it like for you the first time that you got to be in that position and host the draft as the commissioner?
It's emotional for me. It still is because, for that moment to come into the NBA for these players, and just as importantly for their families. So when you're standing up on stage, particularly for the top draft picks who are sitting there right in front of you, you're staring often at their parents, their siblings, their friends. So it's truly emotional. I mean, I feel it along with them. And then when the guys come up on stage, I mean, obviously these are some of the best athletes in the world. They've already performed at a high level in college, in Europe, or whatever else. Like when I put my arm on them and I shake their hand, they're often, you can feel how nervous they are. It's such, and I think it's just a lot of them been holding in the emotion, and it's just a release because even if you're projected to be the 5th pick or the 4th, but whatever it is, the reality of that actually happening. So I'm just saying, like, I'm holding it together too for a lot of them. It's just, and it's, I'll just add it, it's a privilege to be up there. I don't have any particular talent, unlike a player. So I realize I'm fortunate to be part of the experience.
Who was the first player you introduced to the NBA? I said, who was the first person you introduced to the NBA? Like, what was your first pick?
Oh, man, I got to think about that because, I was the deputy commissioner for several years and did the second round as well. So I got to think about that. I can't remember who the first player is that I drafted.
Most definitely. I wanted to ask you this question. Obviously, legal background, worked in the NBA as well. Rest in peace, obviously, the late, great David Stern. What was that moment like when you found out that you were going to be the commissioner?
Oh, man. I mean, I just remember feeling how fortunate I was. I had, at that point, I had already worked for the league for 20 years.
Yes, sir.
At the time I found out, I had worked for David Stern that entire time. So I had a seat in the room, so to speak, for a lot of that had transpired over that time. And I worked hard, but at the same time, I realized it takes a fair amount of luck to be in the right place at the right time. I saw it as tremendous responsibility to carry this league forward off of all those great players that had come before me, great commissioners, David Stern being the most recent. So, it was momentous. There's no question about it. But, it takes a while to sink in. You just, and I still feel that even 11 years later, it's an awesome responsibility because in addition to the literally hundreds of millions of fans globally, that for the players, their families, the tens of thousands of employees of the NBA, and now the WNBA that we're part of, it's, you feel the weight of the responsibility. And in this league, I mean, there's incredible things that happen every day, but there's also things that are risk to the business, and it's ultimate responsibility working together with the players, with the team owners, to make sure the league continues to operate smoothly. So I would say I'm awestruck, but also feel that sense of responsibility.
Most definitely.
Sure.
I got a question. We was talking about draft night and you being up there calling names, and it's been some nights where guys' names didn't get called in that first round. What's that feeling like? Do you ever be like, man, I just hope this kid gets called? Because obviously I didn't go to the green room, but that was a scary feeling for me to be in the green room and not get my name called. And we had some guys go super, super late in the first round and be the last guy in the green room. Like, what's that feeling?
I'm often, it happens occasionally where there is a player who's projected to go higher and drops for whatever reason. And often, in some cases, in between picks, I'll walk down and just say hello to the player and their family. We have a luncheon the day of the draft, so I've talked to them and I see them before the draft. But also just to remind them that nobody can predict the future. I think about, our MVP in Shea, I forget, I don't know, he was like the 11th pick or whatever. He wasn't a top 10 pick. Tyrese wasn't a top 10 pick. But not only were they not top 10 picks, but they were both traded.
Yeah.
You know, and you have incredible players. You know, Jokic was a second-round pick.
Yep.
Young man just pointed out to me. You know, Draymond Green was a second-round pick. I mean, you have, look at the current finals. You know, you have players who are enormous contributors who weren't drafted at all. And so I always see it as my responsibility to remind them that this is just one point in time.
Good.
And you should take motivation from this. And that, again, that understandably these teams are making these decisions, but don't let that sort of prediction be controlling on you, and go double down on your work, because there's a reason that they're there, that they were projected to be there. And even if, you know, if you think the NBA is the 450 best players in the world, so we have a relatively small draft compared, like if you watch the NFL draft, how many rounds they have, it's only a 2-round draft. So again, I just remind them, like, yeah, it sucks in that moment. It feels embarrassing potentially, but go get them. You know, this isn't going to determine your fate.
Most
for
definitely.
sure.
You brought a very interesting point up. We're looking at the finals right now. Obviously, Game 7 will take place very, very soon. We have 2 small market teams. You see a lot of the narratives just like, oh, the NBA is upset. We don't have bigger markets than that. We would love to have that conversation with you, because obviously it's been great basketball being played. The energy's been high. You've been in both arenas. The fans there seem happy. Is it just a narrative? Is it just like, nah, y'all not really tuned in into the actual product?
You know, I could say so much about that. A few things I'll say. One of the points I made the other night was, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of NFL fans here. When the Steelers and the Packers play, you know, Pittsburgh and Green Bay, nobody says 2 small market teams. Mm-hmm. Instead, it's 2 storied franchises. And I want to emulate the NFL from that standpoint. I mean, our goal, and we're on our way there, that whatever market it is, they have passionate fans. They're competing for the championship. And just like in Milwaukee, where you won that championship, Jeff, you know, it's the story isn't that it's a small market. It's the best franchises in the NBA, the best teams in the world competing for championships. Yeah. And increasingly in a digital world where the incremental difference between Indianapolis and Chicago should become irrelevant, because we have a global fan base.
Yes, sir.
We have something like a 2 billion person social media community. I mean, something like 70 million people will have watched the NBA Finals this year. So the fact that there may be 1 million more people that live in one market or another shouldn't be the issue. Now, I accept that it's a narrative going in. The other thing I'll point out, some of those markets are only smaller relative to the size of other NBA markets. The mayor of Oklahoma City pointed out that 300 million Americans, close to 90% of Americans, live in cities and towns that are smaller than Indianapolis and Oklahoma City.
Facts.
Like most of us, I'm from the suburbs of New York, but I grew up in a town, Rye, New York, that had 15,000 people. And so in my growing up, yeah, New York City wasn't that far away, but it seemed like it was 1 million miles away. That was my town. Right. When Little League season started, we had a Little League parade. My high school class only had a couple hundred people in it. That was my world. So I think it owned this small versus big market narrative only becomes relevant because of historically how we've looked at things. But again, the world's changing quickly. To me, if you're Giannis Antetokounmpo and you're in Milwaukee, you're globally known, and nobody's going to convince him that if you went down the road to Chicago, then you can be that much of a bigger star. So, and I'll lastly saying, just going back and forth from Indianapolis to Oklahoma City and vice versa over the last 2 weeks, the passion is unbelievable in those towns.
Thanks.
I just came in from Indianapolis this morning. I mean, you're there, every storefront has banners in it for the Pacers. Same thing in Oklahoma City. Every building has a huge banner on it. Everyone's wearing merchandise. If you see on television, everyone's wearing the team colors. It's like a college environment. And so in some ways, when you're in those markets that are smaller, it captures people's attention even more than, you know, I live in New York City now, when we have teams in this town that are competing for championships, as big as that audience is, it's not as all-consuming as it might be in a
True.
so-called smaller market.